Welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. Today is Friday, May 17th, 2024. I am John Podhoretz, the editor of Commentary Magazine. With me, as always, executive editor Abe Greenwald. Hi, Abe.
Hi, John.
Media commentary columnist Christine Rosen. Hi, Christine.
Hi, John.
Senior editor Seth Mandel. Hi, Seth.
Hi, John.
Joining us today, our contributing editor, staffer at the Free Press, and I guess at some point in the not too distant future, returning as the host of the Reeducation podcast. Is that
it's happening?
It's happening. It's happening. Our friend Eli Lake, and later in the show, people may remember earlier in the week that we played an AI generated song written by our own Eli Lake, dedicated to the Commentary Magazine podcast called "It's Worse Than That." And we have now asked Eli. We'll see if we can get this, whether we can pull this off. But Fridays, Eli is going to try to provide us with a week in review AI generated song on the news of the week, and we are going to debut our first Eli Lake song, aside from "It's Worse Than That," the one earlier in the week, dedicated to the week's news as we conclude the podcast today. So I
should just say I write the lyrics and give the prompts, and the AI does the rest. So it's
whatever
AI
the hell
generated.
that means. He writes the lyrics. He gives the AI something. The AI sends it to China, builds a bomb, and then we get a song back. And
that's pretty much
all of civilization is destroyed in the process. But if this is going to happen, we might as well go down enjoying some fun tunes and hilarious lyrics. So that will happen at the end of the show. We are going to begin the show with liberal panic. Liberal panic emerged yesterday afternoon following the conclusion yesterday of Michael Cohen's testimony in the Trump Stormy Daniels money suppression, 31 charges of misdemeanors raised to felonies for reasons that we are still not being explained, and still not much in the way of conversation about the actual felonies themselves or the crimes themselves, because there was just so much talk on the part of the DA about how Trump did this, and Stormy Daniels suddenly recollected that she felt threatened when they were in the room together, and blah, 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 blah. The reason for the liberal panic is that Michael Cohen apparently acquitted himself very badly in the courtroom yesterday. He is the lead witness against Trump. He is a convicted felon and a confessed perjurer. And generally speaking, you don't want to bring court cases with a single witness as your main corroborating witness to the crimes committed, who is impeachable. And evidently Todd Blanche, Trump's lawyer yesterday, impeached the hell out of Michael Cohen. And I only know that because liberals are panicking. Liberals, earlier in the week, the entire anti-Trump bar, which sits eating popcorn and talking to each other on Twitter about how terrible Trump is and how they really got him this time, was notably silent yesterday afternoon. And people on TV, TV analysts, Jonathan Alter today in the New York Times, who is covering the trial for the op-ed page, and others, now seem genuinely frightened that the course of the trial has turned in Trump's direction, because if the jury decides that Cohen is not a credible witness, it's going to be very hard to achieve the beyond reasonable doubt standard that is required to convict someone of any crime in a courtroom, no matter what the judge does and no matter how the judge instructs the jury. We've been told now for 4 or 5 days or for a week by our friend Andy McCarthy, who knows more about, court trials and things like that than any of, than all of us put together times 100, that the judge's conduct, the judge is clearly trying to move the jury and find things in a certain way that will force the jury to convict Trump. But they still have to decide that they believe what Cohen and Stormy Daniels have been saying. And then if he catches them out in lies and things like that, when Blanche summarizes at the end of the trial, he can say, how can you convict my client on the basis of these people and the testimony that they just delivered. You can't do it. It goes, they're testifying as to Trump's state of mind and what we agreed to, and nothing that Michael Cohen said is anything that you can trust. So, Eli, you wrote a piece for the Free Press about how destructive this trial is to our politics. And I want to stipulate that you write this not as a Trump guy. So give me a sense of how you think the last couple of days have gone.
Well, I think it's important to maybe zoom out, which is that it looks like Biden and the anti-Trump bar and the Democrats are going to run in, for the election in November on the idea that this is an existential threat to democracy. If you elect Trump, he is liable to do very authoritarian things. And when I think of authoritarian things a president would do, I would think of trying to twist the legal process in order to imprison the leader of my political opposition. That's historically how it goes. So there is a kind
not just historically, as we live, as we speak, there are former socialist Soviet republics that are imprisoning,
like
people
Georgia.
who have won. Georgia's one. We have Pakistan does it with remarkable regularity whenever elections happen.
You would think this is a red line, and yet, give me more of the. Am I taking the crazy pills, as you would say? Because that is exactly what's going on. It's like it would be one thing if there was some merit to the case. And we disagreed a year ago about the Mar-a-Lago documents, but I will concede that there are a lot of people who obviously would know the law better than just me, friendly neighborhood journalist, that say that there is merit to the case, and it does, other people, if these were the facts against them, they would have been prosecuted, and I think it's a fair argument. I don't know anyone besides, as the great term, the anti-Trump bar, that thinks that there's any merit to the case. We already know that the case was rejected by the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. We know that the Justice Department entirely declined. We know the Federal Election Commission entirely declined to prosecute this matter. And now we have evidence from Michael Cohen's own lawyer that in 2018, when he was being prosecuted for things that had nothing to do with this, and his lawyer said to him, "What do you have on Trump? That's what these guys want. He was giving him good legal advice." And Cohen said, "I don't have anything." The whole thing was my idea with Stormy Daniels to try to get into the good graces of the Trump inner circle that had moved to Washington after winning the election. He just testified to that, on the House Judiciary Committee. And as I wrote in my piece, that testimony has far more credibility than the testimony of a man who was already convicted of lying to Congress. So again, I'm taking crazy pills that there is a group of people who say that they spend every waking hour figuring out how to make sure Trump does not become president again, who cannot see what is in front of their nose. And what's in front of their nose is that this is exactly how you get Trump again. It's exactly because now any merited case will have the taint of this kangaroo courtroom nonsense. And it's anybody can see it. You don't have to be a lawyer. Any reason, and there have been voices on the New York Times op-ed page. Lots of people have pointed all of this out. So why are they surprised when their convicted perjurer star witness is exposed for being a doofus in this case that's probably going to blow up in their face and is going to be a huge gift to Trump, where he can say, of course, that the system is rigged against you, the system is rigged against me. And by the way, if Biden actually wins, this is a ready-made argument for why the election was stolen. Because it actually, I wouldn't make that argument, and I hope it doesn't come to that, obviously. But you could sort of see it. He's in the courtroom 4 out of 7 days a week. There's gag orders from this crazy partisan judge in the middle of the
4 to 7
campaign.
days a week, by the way, right to your point, that 4 to 7 days a week that you just mentioned, the Biden campaign, they put out T-shirts that said "Free on Wednesdays," which is a play on the fact that he's in court Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday on these charges. And and he mentioned it in the sort of wrestling promo
Yeah.
style debate
Yeah.
challenge, right? I
Yeah.
hear you're
I hear
free
you're
on
free on
Wednesdays,
Wednesday.
and that's how it became. So I've been surprised at that part, Eli. Also, like the sort
Yeah.
of taunting. I feel like it's sort of asking for this response. It's highlighting the fact that he's putting, his guys are putting him on trial, and in a manner of speaking. But the president also always gets criticized for entering any uh, debate over, a trial or a lawsuit or anything like that. When Obama got in trouble for saying it was a stupid arrest when the professor was arrested outside his house in Massachusetts and stuff like that. The police acted stupidly. It was like a week-long story. So this is like a basic thing. So I've kind of been surprised at that
We're not going
aspect
to
of
solve this one with a
Trump's
beer summit.
Yeah, but and Trump's uh so the anti-Trump bar effect is whatever charge there is against Trump is legitimate. And so their job, as they see it, is to do public relations for the cases against him. And this is profoundly politically stupid, which is not surprising because though George Conway is an old friend of mine and is apparently a brilliant lawyer. Politically, he is profoundly stupid. He always was. He always will be. Rick Wilson, head of the Lincoln Project, lost more elections. Was somebody that I was sort of friendly with for Ted. And, we were on the losing side of everything that we ever advocated from 2008 onward. So I'm not then praising my own political seichel here, but obviously, since I'm saying that Rick Wilson and I were both pretty foolish about events in 2008 and 2012, among other things. You lose credibility when you say that things are good that are not good, and clearly the point here is that the case, once Trump's lawyers were allowed to cross-examine witnesses, the two key witnesses, Stormy Daniels earlier in the week and Cohen, and impeach their credibility, things changed in the trial. When the trial is just the judge overruling every objection that the Trump defense lawyers issue, and then the prosecution bringing forth a bunch of boring witnesses to establish very boring fact patterns that aren't and aren't really all that relevant to the case. Once the case is actually engaged in earnest, the entire momentum seems to have shifted. I want to read one thing here, which is a standard jury instruction in New York. And this is where things really could get incredibly dicey for the prosecutors and for the judge. Okay, there is a standard issue jury instruction in New York that says, quote, if you find that any witness has intentionally testified falsely as to any material fact, you may disregard that witness's entire testimony. And 2 or 3 times yesterday, Cohen acknowledged that he had testified not only in this case but another case, like he had gone back on his own story. So you don't know which thing he's saying is true or not, because he's now testified 2 or 3 different ways on various things here. Should Judge Mershon actually decide that he is going to handle this way, right? And he's going to like follow standard jury instructions. He has just given the entire jury leave to say, I don't believe a word that Cohen said, and his testimony cannot influence my judgment.
Next, on Lawrence O'Donnell, why New York's jury instructions are part of a Russian disinformation scheme.
Second, did the witness have a bias, hostility, or some other attitude that affected the truthfulness of the witness's testimony? And Cohen and Costello, whom you mentioned, Costello said yes, and Cohen effectively said yes in answering questions yesterday that he was angry, or that and Blanche was badgering him, saying, "You hated Trump, right? You really hated him. He was terrible." So I'm not in the courtroom. We're not in the courtroom. We have no idea what's going on. But the idea that we were being told in the first couple of weeks that basically the prosecution was just dazzling and they were taking the, it's like leading in the NBA in the first half. Congratulations, you went into the, you went in the first half. You're 20 points up. You have absolutely no assurance that you're going to win the game in the end. Don't we know enough about how this works? Oh man, this is really happening. It's great, because now it's the prosecution's making its case, and so it's won. Blanche is thinking about ending the trial without calling a witness. Generally speaking, when that happens, it's because the defense believes that it has done the best it could possibly do to plant the doubt on reasonable doubt, and that's a strong decision, not a weak decision.
I was watching. It was an analyst on CNN yesterday after this talking about the case, who said, "Look, in Michael Cohen, you have if you're an attorney, like a once in a career opportunity to really skewer someone, to show them off, to really like you it's never going to be. You're never going to have someone laid up on a silver platter for you to take apart like this guy." And that is what happened. And that is exactly the opposite of what like Chris Hayes was saying. He's a smart guy. He can handle himself. He knows how to talk. All nonsense. So the liberal panic is very real now. I was
he
shocked.
held his temper. He was a good witness for a couple of days while he was being asked friendly questions by a friendly lawyer who wanted him to be the person who was going to deliver the knockout blow to Trump. And then, he managed to hold it together, for the first day, and then apparently started losing it on the stand in the second day. And then there was this one bit, again, in terms of impeaching the character of the witness that the jury has to believe if they're going to convict, if the jury is being fair minded, that he wanted the Secret Service to like arrest and prosecute a 14-year-old boy who had gotten his phone number and was making prank calls to him. So not only did he figure out who the kid was and call his parents to say, your kid is calling me and harassing me, but he called Keith Schiller, who was Trump's Secret Service sort of like agent, and basically said, you need to send the Secret Service to arrest this kid. So basically, Blanche is like, is this the kind of person you are? You like sending the Secret Service after a 14-year-old boy? What kind of a scumbag are you?
It's a narc. Yeah.
And let's face it, Cohen is a scumbag. I mean,
Yeah.
he is like not an attractive person. And I don't care whether he held himself together or not,
Can I throw out a question to the panel? Which is me. Can you explain, particularly MSNBC, which is egregious? Can you explain their behavior, but in the same way that maybe we could have explained like talk radio in the Trump years in some ways, right? Which is it's audience capture, and that the demands of the networks and its audience, what they need to hear for their, regular soap opera, outweigh what some of these allegedly really smart journalists and lawyers and former Justice Department officials probably know, which is to say that it's like, our politics are now literally like a political reality show, which is that the reason that we're seeing this is because that is the market incentive for that particular slice or silo of our politics. And if they don't get that, then you see this sometimes on Twitter where, like Kristen Welker or Andrea Mitchell, or recently it's Katie Tur, will try to just basically be a journalist and maybe present another view. And they just get swarmed by all of these people who are watching these shows, not really to be informed, but to be validated, to have their identity confirmed. And that has basically, that's destroyed, people like Chris Hayes and
but they have a challenge, right? Because MSNBC is actually getting a lot of viewers and sort of now becoming the go-to destination. But the NBC, the sort of typical big three network NBC news reporters who sometimes appear on MSNBC platforms are now having to make a choice about how partisan they want to pitch their stories, and they're losing objectivity for viewers. Right. And that's a kind of a different pipeline than what Fox News did in the cable space way back when, which was just to present, this is who we are the conservative brand, we are the alternative to this. MSNBC is going to have to square this circle sooner rather than later, because it's leading to mistrust of journalists.
But what I'm saying is that there's a difference between we're the conservative brand, because you would hear Karl Rove say, this isn't very good for, Mitt Romney, that kind of thing. And it would be conservative, sure, in terms of story selection, but it was still, tethered to reality.
Right.
The coverage of this trial as if it's a slam dunk, Trump's finally going to get it, the walls are closing in. Oh man, this Blanche guy bombed. Oh, man. I mean, that's what you're getting on these shows with Nicole Wallace and everything. Yeah. That stuff is so ridiculous that perhaps the explanation is that she understands, I dare not say the emperor has no clothes, because if I do, that's not only my job, but I'm out of the trial.
Well, and MSNBC is the very online left's constituency. That's the constituency there. So if you are an NBC reporter who speaks or a Democratic operative who tells the truth on that network, you're going to get some blowback online for it.
Look, I used to be on MSNBC, once or twice a week between 2017 and 2020 when COVID hit. And that was sort of the end of my tenure as a sort of non-Trump voice on the right. That I was one. Noah Rothman was one. There were a couple of us. We were there. Every time I was on, and I would get off the air and I would look on Twitter, there would be 150 messages saying, and I would be attacking Trump, and they would be saying, "Why are you having this guy on? Why is this fascist on? It's like, this is ours. You're bringing in a pathogen. You're bringing in a disease. This is terrible. Who is this fat guy? Like that. Like, it was not. It was fascinating to watch. And I do have an analogy for you guys, which is the world of fandom. So fandom is a phenomenon, really, of the social media age. So of course there have always been fans, and there have always been people who went to Star Wars conventions and Star Trek conventions and went to Comic-Con and did cosplay and all of that.
By the way, the classic text on this is the Weezer bit on SNL. Do you know which one I'm talking about? Which is like the perfect that sums up what you're talking about. Yeah.
So fandom is dedicated to, you would have Twitter feeds, Reddits, this and that are dedicated to loving something, but more than you love life itself, and hating people who criticize it. And so in the world of fandom, or hating change to it or something like that. So in the world of fandom, the idea is there is going to be a new Star Wars thing, or there is going to be something that is related to something else. And if you say, I don't think this is a good idea, or that episode was really not very good of the streaming show, or something like that, tens of thousands of people are going to come down on you like a ton of bricks. So there's a fandom, one of my favorite podcasting networks, The Ringer, run by Bill Simmons, is both a sports fandom and a kind of pop culture fandom network, and they have dozens of podcasts on The Ringer. And once I was listening to one that was related to maybe the show Obi-Wan Kenobi, which was horrible. This show with Ewan McGregor playing Obi, it was one of the worst things that was ever on television. And these two women, Joanna Robinson and Mallory Rubin, were talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi, and one of them said to the other, "I just love talking to you about this show because I want to love everything about Star Wars, and when I hear you, it just makes me love Star Wars more." And I thought, that's a very interesting thing that's going on here, because she is signaling to the listenership that she's watching this thing, it's garbage, but maybe she can be talked into thinking that it's wonderful because don't yell at her because she knows it's garbage, because then you're going to turn on her, you're not going to listen to the podcast, and then she's going to get fired. You can't have critical distance. So why am I comparing this to all of this? Because the court case strategy, right, which was to flood the zone, get Trump indicted as many times as possible to see what will stick, has now come all entirely down to this one case in New York, because the January 6th case is not going to trial before the election. The classified documents case is not going to trial before the election. And Fani Willis is in a mess of trouble relating to her conduct of the Atlanta case. So it all boils down to this, and they cannot bear the thought that it's not going, at least until the verdict, they can comfort themselves and satisfy their fan base by saying, boy, they're really going to get Trump. Eli, you said, like, what's the main claim? The main claim is he's authoritarian and he's like a terrible threat to democracy. That's not what this case is, right?
No.
That's the January 6th case, is the case about whether or not Trump is a threat to democracy. This is a case about, did he pay hush money, and did paying the hush money, I guess the secondary crime, somehow create the conditions under which he won an election that he should have lost.
Right, but the motive for this was clearly the sleaze. This is the sleaze trial. Make him look, it's a character assassination trial. I mean, some of it justifiable.
I mean,
I just want to, regarding the liberal networks here, I think it's slight. It is there's the fandom aspect, John, but they're also selling something else that isn't common to sort of entertainment or sports fandom, which is righteousness. Their viewers get to feel righteous about hating something awful that's happening or being excited for something great that's going to happen. And they have to keep pumping that into the veins of the viewers, which means, and you can get righteous about something. Righteousness doesn't even have to connect to the content of the thing you're righteous about. It's like it's this sort of runaway epiphenomenon. So it no longer has to connect to what's happening in the real world. They just have to keep pumping you full of that. And that's how they get so disconnected from the actual facts of the case.
Look, in 2012, Dick Morris, who was then on Fox constantly, said Romney was going to win, and then Romney lost. And then a couple of days later, either in an interview or something, he said, well, I knew Romney was going to lose, but I needed to keep people's spirits up.
Right.
And to give them heart. And this was long ago enough that was kind of the end of him as a public pundit. He said, I believed that he was going to lose, and I lied on television about it because I wanted people to think that he was going to win. Why? Because he has newsletters, he has this, he has that. He said he wanted to keep people's spirits up. But that disingenuousness was, I think, thought of as a bridge too far. You can't do that. You can't say that. That is so no longer the case that, you are supposed to say things that to be untrue in order to satisfy the demands of the audience that you are trying to capture.
And if you don't, by the way, you are accused. If you don't, you are accused of vote suppression. Right. Because you're going to stop people from going to the polls.
Yeah, you're going to make them unenthusiastic.
Think it's not close. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I found it almost impossible to watch Fox beginning in 2016 when it basically said, to hell with it. Obviously, Trump is going to be the nominee and we have to go all in on him, because I don't want to watch things where anybody is all in on anybody. That's not, I understand that millions of people do, and that my attitude is now increasingly I don't know what you call it, quixotic. But I don't need that. I understand. I can listen to the candidates themselves and their spokesman and get the spin. I don't need Sean Hannity to be Trump's press secretary. Trump has a press secretary. I can get the pure message from his press secretary. I don't need to listen to that. That's an hour out of my day. I can get back to, to read a bad celebrity memoir. So, but again, I'm not. And remember, these people are also fighting over a very small number of people. That's the other interesting thing, is that you're talking about MSNBC getting 2 million people, Fox getting 3 million people. That's like less than 1% of the country at any given moment. It's not like when Walter Cronkite had a third of the country tuned into his nightly newscast. We're talking about, in aggregate, 4% of the country. And so they need every single one of those people, or they will die. And they make a lot of money. Weirdly, a lot of the money they make is not from advertising. That's the other joke, is we think, my pillow guy is, spending all this money, and MSNBC has, when they get, old age ads and ads about how not, drugs to prevent Alzheimer's and all of that. Most of the money they make is from what are called carriage fees, cable companies paying them fees to carry their network. And that's a huge amount of money when you sort of do it across the country. And so if, CNN or MSNBC makes a couple $100 million a year in profit, it's not because of the size of their audience. Most of that is flat, and it's flat based on contracts for carriage that are, in some way, in part mandated by law. So that's the other funny part about audience capture, is if MSNBC went straight and it lost a lot of its ratings, it would lose no money. It would lose almost no money. So there is a choice being made here to be what it is, and for Fox to be what it is.
Can I just briefly, that's related to all of this? I'm a Washingtonian. I was born in Philadelphia. But for the New Yorkers who are listening to this podcast, please, 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 defeat this national embarrassment, Alvin Bragg, a district attorney who will not arrest actual criminals menacing the subways, menacing our streets, and who goes out of his way to basically twist the law into a weapon against Trump and his organization. It's un-American. It's bad for our democracy. And you have an obligation, I would hope, as just decent New Yorkers, fair-minded New Yorkers, the greatest city in the world, in my view. I say that as a Philadelphian. To please, if you are listening, if you're in the earshot of my voice, please make sure that the message is sent that this district attorney is thrown out on his ear, because that is a way that nature can heal. Because things have gone off the rails, and Alvin Bragg must be made into a kind of cautionary tale, so that all of these lawyers who are coming up through the Tentifada elite law schools right now will look at Alvin Bragg's fate and say to themselves, I do not want that to happen to me. So the ball's in your court, New Yorkers. you gotta throw this guy out.
Bragg could be the new Comey. Imagine a world.
Oh God, no, never.
No. Let me explain to you what I mean.
Yeah.
James Comey arguably, I think almost inarguably, got Trump elected in 2016.
Yeah.
He reopened the Hillary case. Okay.
Yeah.
He reopened the Hillary case on the 20th of October, and that hung over the last 2 weeks of the election and gave Trump renewed life, as she seemed to be walking slowly into a small but real victory in the election. Bragg loses this case. That's going to be now it's going to be very hard for him to lose the case. I think the best thing for Trump would be if the jury hung. I don't know that 12 people are going to acquit Trump, but should that happen, or even should it hang, hero to villain. Bragg's the greatest to Bragg has let this country down. He brought a terrible case. He's given Trump ammunition, and he's given him oxygen, and he's given him what, Biden wants to be able to say that he was convicted. Bragg didn't secure a conviction. There's no other case coming forward. They're going to be so mad at him. Ooh, boy.
Yeah, but I think that the other people who are sick of the nonsense should also be mad at him.
They should be, but this is New York, and it's Manhattan. More importantly, it's Manhattan. The outer boroughs don't get a vote in the Alvin Bragg case, tragically. So, and Manhattanites have every reason to want to get him the hell out of there, and who knows what'll happen. But I wouldn't bet the farm on that. Let me take a quick break and talk to you about Abe's sheets. Abe, we're talking about your sheets. Tell me a little bit about your sheets.
My sheets are Boll and Branch. They are in the natural color, which is like a sort of creamy color. They fit perfectly on the bed, top and bottom labeled, and they get softer with each wash. That still holds true all this time later, and I love them.
All right, listen. They're best selling. They feel incredible on night one. They're made with the finest 100% organic cotton. They feel buttery soft. They're super breathable. They're loved by millions of sleepers. They bring a 30-night worry-free guarantee, so you can wash, style, and sleep in their sheets for an entire month. If you don't love them, you can send them right back. They also have the airiest blankets, the most cloud-like duvets, fluffiest pillows, so much more. 14 versatile colors, including the one that Abe mentioned, in all sizes from twin up to California King. Made without toxins, free from synthetic pesticides, formaldehyde, and other harsh chemicals. And again, return them after 30 days if you don't like them. Sleep better with the softest, most breathable bedding from Boll and Branch. Get 15% off your order when you use promo code commentary at bollandbranch.com. That's BOLLANDBRANCH.com. Promo code commentary. Exclusions apply. See site for details. Can I just cite one thing in the tentifada of the world of the Congress, the world of the college campus horror show that is going on, is that there was a genuinely psychotic and deranged moment that I think is worth noting. And it came at a state university in California. State universities in California are not independent institutions. They are owned by the state. They are run by a board of regents and so on. And there is one called Sonoma State University, which you've never heard of. So my guess is that there's a reason we've never heard of it. The president was placed on an indefinite leave of absence yesterday. What did he do? He sent an email to the university community announcing that he had acceded to anti-Israel demands, including the divestment of, resources from Israel. It will not pursue and engage in any study abroad programs, faculty exchanges, or other formal collaboration with the Israeli state academic and research institutions. It will update any pamphlets that may still be circulating. It will make clear to any students that their programs are terminated, and he will seek divestment strategies. His name is Ming-Tung Mike Lee. Ming-Tung Mike Lee had literally no authority to issue any of these directives or pronouncements. He does not make policy. He is a manager of this institution and certainly has no right to talk about divesting funds, which are not individual to Sonoma State University. They're part of the entire University of California endowment system, and money is allocated to them. And he was suspended and will presumably be fired at some point for overreaching. So the question is, did he go insane, or is this actually now, are we in a world in which even the administrators who have been part of this mindset for 20 years now believe that they can manifest and incept through their brain waves and things that they issue on paper, policies they have no way to affect, simply to give themselves some kind of orgasmic pleasure at the pronouncement itself? This seems to be a paradigmatic moment that this guy goes off like having a nervous breakdown in public because he wants to issue the statement. Like, I don't know, like Jerry Maguire has the fever, that he's got 104 fever, and he issues the 28-page document about how his agency should take on less clients and make less money in order to serve their clients better. And then he wakes up when he's better and realizes that he's just destroyed his career. What do you make, Abe, what do you make of this?
I don't know. It doesn't strike you more as a one-off, I think. I mean, it certainly says that the weaker administrators in the universities are totally susceptible to the pressure. We've seen that over and over again. But this one guy just, sort of flying off and decreeing, anti-Israel policy. I think it's a one-off. I think he probably is. He probably did go a little crazy.
In support of that, I would point to the Rutgers situation where the Rutgers administration folded on 8 of 10 demands by the protesters. But the 2 things they didn't fold on, they gave written responses to the 10 demands of the protesters. One of them was about divestment, and the written response was like, "That's not up to me." So hopefully that, that's evidence for the idea that maybe most of these administrators know that they're powerless, worthless, empty puppets, and the protesters are the ones finding that out. And then there's going to be a couple cases where somebody who has this job thinks that they're important and powerful and tries to assert that and is reminded that they are, an empty puppet or whatever. And in the Rutgers case, I think it's, made very clear to people that there's a certain figurehead aspect to being the head of a public college or a public school of any kind, really. And that, anything that's really taxpayer funded. And so they at least recognize that. But I think that some people, it's possible that instead of having a nervous breakdown, it's possible that there are some people who take these jobs who don't understand that they are not as powerful as either their private school peers or they thought they were. Like, it's possible that, you got hired because they understood that you're an idiot and you don't even know that you're not powerful, right? Like, I would hire the guy who doesn't understand that he doesn't have this power because he doesn't know how little respect we have for him as we hire him.
Well, this is the distinction between the public-private that's important. I think a lot of the public universities, particularly ones in states with legislatures controlled by Republicans, state legislatures, are going to start feeling some more pressure, as we've seen with some of the DEI stuff that's been challenged by state legislatures at state universities. And the private schools, however, I think if you're a savvy administrator at a private school, a private college or university, you wait it out, right? You cave to these demands, as many of them have, particularly with faculty hiring, the promises of hiring only Palestinian scholars or whatnot. And you realize that it takes a long time to hire a tenure track faculty member. There are meetings, you've got all these interviews. It takes at least a year, maybe a year and a half if you stretch it out. And by that time, the little radicals might have graduated. And so maybe they'll forget that they made these demands, and 1 or 2 radical professors might bring it up, but you could perhaps just sort of hope that it all settles. So caving to these demands might not actually be, I think they shouldn't do it. I think it's ridiculous, but I could see and imagine administrators doing that. But this idea of public universities being held to public accountability is really important. And I think we do need to see that, as well as the lawsuits that have been brought on behalf of Jewish students, which every week we get some more of those. These are all for the good, because the liability issue is what should be keeping university presidents, whether they're public or private universities, awake at night.
I just have one
thing. I add like another thing that sort of is maybe a note of optimism. If you remember when these started at Columbia, there was a huge debate over sending in the police because campus security couldn't handle it. And that everybody in the back of their mind had Kent State in mind and the clashes at Columbia in '68. And the assumption was that if the police got involved, you were asking for trouble. There would be something that would happen, and, it would escalate even more. And what we found is, particularly in New York, the police are fully equipped in how to professionally clear these encampments and, rescue janitor hostages from take buildings that have been taken over. And there were no real injuries, and it was done in a way that, we should all be very proud of, and that these institutions, the police, have learned the lessons of the 60s, and that we're not seeing the kind of out of control stuff that, is kind of, in these actions. And that, I think, is a very good development, because I think a savvy college administrator can also sort of think, that line was crossed and it wasn't the end of the world.
Look, the simple fact of the matter is we've been having this debate now for a month over free speech on campuses and this incredible Orwellian inversion of people who are blocking people's free passage
Right.
around pathways on campuses and trying to stop them and shouting them down and all of that, saying that their free speech is being violated. Sonoma State University is a public school, like is owned by the state. It is therefore under the laws of the United States, every student, every teacher, everybody on campus has complete First Amendment protections. You cannot, as a matter of law, impose an academic boycott on any student or any teacher. That would be a top-down violation of the right not only to assembly but to speech. So this guy issues the statement saying we are boycotting Israel. He cannot do that. He would, if he actually somehow were able to impose this penalty, he would be liable for violations of the First Amendment rights of thousands of people. Like,
Yeah.
this is a different situation. Private institutions can, in theory, boycott Israel or China or whatever for its behavior toward the Uyghurs. Wouldn't that be an interesting thing that could happen that's not happening and will never happen?
I mean, it's the hypocrisy of the people who are ginning up the pro-Hamas protests to claim that they're big fans of the First Amendment and free speech when it's the same professors and the same activists who've been assaulting free speech on campus now for a generation is absurd. And I've come up with I think is a kind of a pithy line on this, which is that free speech is the last refuge of the censor. And that is really what we're seeing with these. They are not interested in free speech. It's a joke that they're wrapping themselves in the First Amendment, and let's metaphorically throw rotten fruit at them.
It's pure Tartuffery, right? Moliere's play Tartuffe, which is about a holier than thou a cleric who takes over a household and is the owner of the household is in his thrall because he is such a holy and wise man, and then he proceeds to sleep with every woman in the house and steal his money and all of that, and that's Tartuffery at its best. So we've come to the end of our week, and Eli Lake, we are doing an experiment, potential inauguration of a weekly feature. You have been writing songs. I would say you are turning into the Steve Allen. Steve Allen famously wrote 10,000 songs while he was the host of the Tonight Show. You are turning into the Steve Allen of AI.
I like to think of myself as the neocon Quincy Jones.
The neocon, every 3 hours, we are getting a new song from you on some topic in every possible genre of music. And so today we are having done it's worse than that. Today's tell us about, first of all, tell us very briefly, because no one's going to understand it because I don't, how you're doing what you're doing, and then introduce your first song.
Okay, there's a beta program called Udio, that's UDIO, and it's like magic. And what I have, I will write a little verse or two, and in 30-second chunks, you enter your lyrics into the program, and then you write a series of prompts. It could be the year. It could be a genre. It could be an instrument. You can say close harmony, male, that kind of thing. And it's still, it's still an evolving technology. So I would say that, you only get something that's really that's good, maybe 1 out of every 8 tries or 7 tries. But you tinker with it, you can remix it, and then you finally get something and you sort of build off of that. And it doesn't take that. I mean, the amazing thing is that once you enter it in, it takes a couple minutes, maybe tops. And then you get a song that comes out, or 30 seconds of a song. And anyway, I have not had this much fun since I can remember. And that's how the process works. And I will say in this particular case, on this song, John wanted something about the news of the week, so I chose the debates that we learned about this week between Biden and Trump. So Biden agrees to the debates. Listen to it for yourself. I presented John with a couple early drafts, and he gave very good feedback. Said, you should go with a kind of more country one. And then I kind of went back and, like a good editor, that was good advice. I think it turned out really well. I have to say, I think it turned out well. It's very different in the style than the commentary theme song, which was more of maybe an homage to the great group El DeBarge or Chic as Chic.
That's the first one earlier this week, right? It was 80s.
This is more. I was going for kind of in the style of the Byrds or the Flying Burrito Brothers or Graham Parsons. That kind of
with very different politics. So anyway,
yes.
We will see you on Monday for Christine, Abe, Seth, and Eli Lake. Thank you very much. We will be back. We will play the song after I speak these words. Keep the candle burning.
The Lincoln Douglas on the stump. Now we're stuck with Biden Trump. A match of wits for 50 states. America, you're great debate. Crazy screamer, feeble man. Both guys lost Afghanistan. As the world unravels, two men babble, shout their slogans, I'm not joking. Two men battle, raise their rabble, can't you see we're broken? Donald Trump is prone to say, Hunter Biden's super gay. For Ukraine cash, hookers crack, Hunter wants his laptop back. As the world unravels, two men babble, shout their slogans, I'm not joking. Two men battle, raise their rabble, can't you see we're broken? Two old dudes who have it all, Alzheimer's versus Adderall. This the end, we had a run. America, it's been fun. If this is it, I have to say, I may as well vote RFK. As the world unravels, two men babble, shout their slogans, I'm not joking. Two men battle, raise their rabble, can't you see we're broken? America, your great debate. America, your great debate.